So hello and thank you very much indeed, colleagues, for joining us. It's lovely to see representation from across the UK. And hopefully I will be able to take you through this year's annual self-report. It looks like I know many colleagues already on the call, but if you don't know me, my name is Sophia Hunt. I'm Head of Education and Quality Assurance here at the NMC, and I'm joined by a number of colleagues today who I will just quickly introduce, and hopefully they will be speaking to you later on if they can support with any questions. So I am joined by Bijal Patney, who's the Data Analyst in Education Quality Assurance here at the NMC. And we're also joined by at least two members of our Quality Assurance Service Partner, the Quality Assurance Agency. And I'm joined today by Kirsty Davis, who is the midwife lead for all things NMC contract. And I think we've also got Natalie Robinson on the call as well, who is a nursing lead at the QAA. So you've got a good team here with you today to talk through the ASR. And Kirsty is going to be not only trying to manage some questions for us today in the chat, but also going to be developing those into a frequently asked questions document that we can share with you and will support not only today's webinar, but be a little bit more iterative over the support sessions that we've put in to follow up as well. So, as promised at our conference way back in May, which feels like a heartbeat ago, we have stuck with the deadlines that we talked through with you and consulted on at that point, and hopefully are going to be able to continue to deliver on. We'll try and do our part, just as we know you try and do your part. And so, you know, in the true spirit of collaboration, we're going to talk through as clearly as we can the instructions that we have for you. So today I want to cover kind of the real operational practical expectations for the submission, the format, which has changed again very, very slightly, but in line with feedback that we got last year on our pilot project. I'll talk about the thematic questions that we are asking, the declarations process, and of course, really importantly, who should be making them on behalf of your organisation, the timeline for when we're going to launch the ASR, and submission deadlines and dates. We'll get a chance possibly to address some questions today, but the likelihood is you'll want to go back and actually physically look at the documents, and you'll want to come back to one of our question and answer sessions that we've already scheduled and published. And I know that's worked because so many colleagues have kindly signed up to them. So really appreciate that. Okay, so just a quick run through the practicalities. Every year we're asked to clarify what is the reporting period. So it is the 1st of September to the 31st of August. Okay, we recognise that does not align probably with anyone's academic year, let alone everyone's academic year, but we need a line in the sand. This is the one we've gone for I think at least 10 years. So we're going to stick with this, and it is students. We recognise you'll have some students join and some students leave within that time period, but we are absolutely sticking with those dates as the parameters for reporting. So it is inclusive of both of those dates. So the form must be completed in collaboration with practice learning partners, and how you have gained their agreement and understanding is entirely a university's decision, but we do ask that you involve your partners, because as everyone on this call knows, all of our standards are collaborative and in partnership. So we ask for practice learning partner involvement in all aspects of course governance, and therefore it's important that they do feel they have a say in these declarations, and particularly this year as we're asking some practice learning focused questions. So you must report on all NMC approved programmes even if they're not actively used during that year. We will be talking a lot about the approved programmes list throughout this webinar, but even if it is a nil return, you should still be making that nil return, because it's important to us to understand what programmes are and are not being used, and particularly where students are looking to register when things have actually been effectively decommissioned, or if they are just not in use at the moment and you intend to use them again. We are seeing changes in whether people are using, for example, their learning disabilities field of nursing practice, and it's really important data and intelligence to us to understand where that is and why that is. So please do report on all programmes. You should only add rows. Please do not edit the forms. Hopefully, we've tried our best to lock down some of the options within the Excel spreadsheets. However, please do not make the forms any more complicated than they need to be. And we have set them up in a way that means we can amalgamate and use the data collectively. So please try to avoid any accidental editing. Please don't provide us with hyperlinks or embedded documents. Safe data security means we shouldn't be clicking on links, etc., or having embedded documents. But also there could become a misunderstanding about whether or not we have actually seen the evidence or not. So when we want evidence, we will ask you for it, and if not, assume that we are not looking to evidence that we are accepting your declaration as evidence, because of course it is a legitimate form of evidence. So we ask that your forms, not the online one, but are submitted as Excel documents. Please do not PDF lock them or otherwise, because it means we're unable to extract that data. It's just going to cause a bit of a delay for you and additional requests of you. So if we can try and get it right first time, that would be wonderful. And this time there are 2 Excel spreadsheets. I am going to talk about the reasons for that and why they are very different. But please, can you submit them at the same time for us, rather than, us trying to find and piece together the different aspects of your jigsaw. That would just be a really useful piece of support for us. So, as I've already alluded to, this year the ASR is coming out in 3 parts. Part 1, very similar to last year, the online declarations form, and we're going to talk about what those declarations are going to be and how they're going to look. There is the key programme data spreadsheet, which mirrors what you have had for the last, I think, 2 years at least. So when you're looking for your HESA data codes and that kind of thing, look at what you sent us last year, because if we were happy with it then, we're happy with it now. We'd like the same codes, please, to track through on those courses, so that we can see that data over whatever period of time we need to look at. For quality assurance of the programmes, last year we came back to a number of AEIs to request clarification. You've clearly got over the line, so have a look at what you sent us last time, please. And then part 3, I will talk about in a few minutes, but it is going to be your AEI's list of approved programmes and titles. And we will talk about why we're sending that. But that is us sending you some information. Hopefully it's seen as a proactive and supportive step. But the reason we are doing that, as I say, we'll come into a bit more detail, but also it really helps when you're trying to report on all your provision to have that aide memoir as to what we think is all your provision, particularly where we're looking for those nil responses. So it might be a program you don't use, that you've perhaps forgotten to follow the NMC program closure process, and therefore it's still kind of sat there in the ether to enable you to actually close it if that's what's necessary. So that's why we're sending that third part, and it will be specific to each AEI that comes out. Okay, this will test the tech a little bit. We will see if this takes us to the part 1, which is a test page of that. Okay, so it opens for me, but I'm going to guess I need to manually share that with you. Here we go. Right, does that now look like a form? Hopefully so. Okay, I'm unable to hear anybody, so hopefully
no, it doesn't.
It doesn't look like a form. Okay.
Oh, well, maybe it does. But
it is Microsoft Forms at the top, Sophia. So it does say Forms Office, but it's a very flashy form that looks a little bit like PowerPoint, I think, because you just need to scroll down and then it should show the form.
Does that work?
There
we are.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. And it may or may not actually look like a Microsoft form when it comes out to you. We have some new software that hopefully will make this a little bit easier for you, but it will look and feel incredibly similar to this. It could also look like a Qualtrics form. As I say, we're using this as a test at the moment. Hopefully you're able to see that. But just to make sure you go through all the questions, this is what we've got here. So you will be going through very, very similar to, well, exactly the same as last year, and just putting in the details of your AEI, and then answering hopefully quite straightforward yes or no questions, which then determines whether or not you need to answer that question set. So if you're pressing no, you move through without any further questions. However, if it's a yes, it will open up some further questions for you. And hopefully that minimises any unnecessary repetition within the question set and keeps it quite focused to the provision that you're offering. So if you're an AEI who just offers prescribing programs, then that is all you will need to report on, bar no, we don't do nursing, no, we don't do midwifery. Again, the NMC dream is that we will get to a point where that is all set up for you and only reflects your provision, but we are not quite there yet. Okay, so that's the form, and hopefully provides some assurance that it will feel familiar, and I will try and get us back straight away to where we were on the presentation. Has that come back, everybody? Lovely, thanks. Okay. So thematically, what are we going to be asking? As we promised at the conference, etc., we're going to try and keep questions as bespoke to where the areas of risk or concern are, or where we need to understand the national picture, or the 4 countries picture is perhaps more appropriate. So we have picked out some thematic questions as we go through. Now, one of these areas we are asking about within nursing is bridging modules and alternative access routes. That links very specifically to standard 1.5, which is recognition of prior learning within the nursing standards, and we want AEIs to be declaring whether or not they use a bridging module or alternative access points into their nursing programme. Okay, so that will be a yes or no. And likewise, we are also asking about foundation years. Now, this links to the standards related to admissions and progression within the nursing standards. So we will be asking about that. And this information is being collected so that we can provide appropriate support and guidance about how programmes are advertised and recruited to, and when NMC requirements apply to that. So we've done a bit of internal research on this, and now we want to understand the AEI picture so that we can scope our supporting information and support to individual AEIs if and when it is needed. Okay, so within midwifery specifically, we are continuing to monitor changes and look for trends in particularly the birth numbers, but also the ability to for students to undertake their 100 antenatals and all of those different requirements that we have within the standards. So we are collecting that data again in the same format as last year so that we can check and monitor trends and changes. We also have some thematic questions that are going across all programmes, and those relate to practice assessment documents. So we wrote to you in August, actually making the sector aware of some identified case studies that we had for practice assessment documents, and this is a follow-up onto that. So we will be asking if you have commenced, completed, or not started yet the review process that we requested within that letter. And we also want to understand what practice assessment documentation you are using within your nursing programmes, and whether or not you have moved that to an online platform, and which online platform if you have, so that if there is a issue or concern identified, we can go to AEIs that we legitimately believe are using that particular combination of practice assessment document and online platform and have that conversation with you. At the moment, that information about which online platform somebody is using is a private contractual arrangement, and we're not aware in a consistent way of which tools people are using. This is to support you to understand any risks that we identify and whether or not they could apply to your provision. So for nursing, midwifery, nursing associate and post-registration programmes, we are asking this question because there's no reason an AEI couldn't have nursing and midwifery in different schools or faculties and potentially using different platforms and certainly different agreed practice assessment documentation. So that might feel repetitive, but hopefully it's a really quick use the drop down, select. In fact, it isn't a drop down, it's a statement that you can select so that you can see all of the options available to you at once. That was a part of the feedback and a change was made. And I've already spoken about the review. We're also asking about practice learning experiences and how some of our standards have been interpreted and are being utilised by yourself and your practice learning partners or employer partners for work-based programmes. This is one of the areas where we have outcomes focused standards. So we have something along the lines of regularly review practice learning environments, and we want to understand how each AEI has interpreted that. So we are asking about what that review looks like. For many AEIs, that will be their educational audit process, but we don't say that's how you have to call it. But what is your cycle? How often do you review those? And we're also asking about formal complaints that you've received about practice learning, about the number in total. So not the details, just the total number. And it will be for you to look within your policies internally, which of course we've looked at the point of programme approvals, within your escalation policy when things have become a formal complaint. So not informal level that perhaps an academic assessor or a link lecturer is managing, but when there is a formal aspect to that, such as the complaint is taken back to practice learning or goes through your formal complaints team. Please don't be concerned about what that number is. Whatever that number is, we look at it in the context of your overall provision. Okay, so if you had 30 students and 6 formal complaints, that might feel like a large proportion that we wish to follow up on. However, a similar number of complaints with 3,000 students is a very different proportion, and everything we try to do in EdQA starts with a conversation rather than to understand the circumstances rather than a judgment. And we're also going to be asking about your EDI policies and how they are captured within the organisation. We wrote to you again much earlier in the year about the NMC's EDI objectives and the commitments that we wish to make to future registrants in preventing disproportionate outcomes and progression. This will link to your own awarding gaps information. So we are asking just, have you got an up-to-date policy, and whether that sits at an AEI level or a programme specific level? You might have both. That's absolutely great. And just whether or not upon request you would be able to provide that to us. We will evidence sample within the overall population of AEIs, but we are looking to, if requested, could you provide this? Is the yes or no? Okay, hopefully that feels proportionate. So, as with every ASR, it is an annual self-report, the emphasis being on the self-reporting. So you are being asked to make declarations against our standards and the statements associated with them. But we know from feedback and from working over a number of years with particularly official correspondents and lead midwives, you are being asked to make that declaration on behalf of an organisation. So please be assured, particularly registrants on the call, please be assured that we know you are making this on behalf of the organisation, and so our questions are termed in to the best of my knowledge, to the best of my belief, rather than that you are personally aware of every single thing that could possibly have happened in your institution. And we know that that is an unrealistic expectation to place onto individuals. That is not a pressure point we wish to create. We do not say that the official correspondent is responsible for submitting the ASR. It is about the organisation deciding who has the accountability, who is at an appropriately senior level to be this person making those declarations. We do not say it needs to be a registrant. We do say the LME, the lead midwife for education, if you have one, needs to be a part of the declarations for midwifery programmes, because that directly interlinks to a standard. And of course, if your LME is currently away from work for any reason whatsoever during this period, that or suitable midwifery delegate comes into play, and we ask you to tell us who that person is and the rationale for them stepping into that LME role if you need to use somebody who is not your LME. If you can tick the box, the LME's been involved, and that is the LME we hold on the quality assurance link and on our published website page, then no need to add any extra explanation there. Okay, so when we need an LME, we make it clear in that set of programs. Right. Part 2, I'm going to talk quite broadly about. It does mirror the data spreadsheet that you received last year, and when we get to the end of this and we've kind of gone through my presentation stage, we can get that up if we need to answer any specific questions. And as I say, I have Bijal with me today, who is our data expert on the team. So at a high level, part 2 is the key program data spreadsheet that you normally receive. We wish for you to cover in your listings all satellite sites, partnership delivery sites and endorsements, because they are under your AEI's governance and structures. Therefore, you are responsible for reporting on them. We want to understand the utilisation of programmes, so how many students are on each part of the programmes. We want to know programmes that didn't run or need to be discontinued. We always ask about anticipated changes in student numbers, because we know by this point, particularly the 25-26 data, you roughly know whether you've had a good recruitment year or a bad one. Therefore, you might be able to give us some anticipated changes in student numbers. There is the log of minor modifications, which again, we report on, and we will evidence sample. We will check what the QAA will do, the first check, to ensure that those were minor modifications and that they perhaps shouldn't have gone down a major modifications pathway. And any intended programme modifications, again, that is so that we can get you some early advice and guidance about making that modification, and it is about understanding our business planning and what the demand is going to be, so that we can do our best to plan with the QAA to meet that demand when you're going to want it, and stay as agile and flexible for you as possible. So part 3 of the ASR, and I was so sad to have to add a part 3. However, actually this has come from something people keep requesting of us, which is, can we have a full list of everything the NMC thinks we have approved, what the correct titles are, and just check it's right, etc. And so we have factored this in here, because it always seems unfair if some AEIs are given access to something and others aren't. We do want to keep that consistent across the UK, but also we are noticing quite a lot of change within programme titles. So it's very much what we're seeing as an upstream review process, because if the programme title isn't exactly right, when that student comes to join the register, the system says that that course doesn't exist. And that creates absolutely understandable panic and, you know, students feeling like, oh my goodness, have I sat an unapproved programme, and frustration for AEI colleagues who are having to manage that, usually at a point when, you know, these things always happen in August and that kind of thing. So very keen that we use this as an upstream check, so that if it is approved, as in if it can lead to registration, it is listed. Now, the other thing that we are seeing is actually a bit of drift in what is being advertised. So you will have noted, those of you who do receive and engage with our monthly newsletters, we did put in, I think it was the September one, about the programme titles, that they are a part of the approved programme, and that the misrepresentation of them through the way in which an AEI advertises a programme is not in line with NMC expectations. And an example of that might be that a nursing dual award, where there is 2 fields of practice, becomes advertised as dual registration, which for the NMC means on 2 parts of the register, not within the nurses part of the register. So nurse and midwife, for example. And we appreciate that that can be more of a marketing and recruitment kind of a thing, but it has to stay in line with NMC expectations, and therefore we want you to be checking that your programme titles and our programme titles align, so that you don't get any of those periods of kind of stress when it comes to registering students. Okay, so just going to the timeline then before we go to questions. We are still, hopefully, I believe, on track for launch this afternoon to get the forms out to each AEI. Now, this is more complex than normal because we have that part 3, which obviously, rather than send out one email to all AEIs, we are sending out bespoke emails to each AEI. So that is why I'm slightly tentative. I believe we are good to go and we will get them all out this afternoon. All aspects need to come back by Wednesday, the 19th of November at 5 o'clock, please. Okay, we have published this timeline since May. We have been talking about this timeline, so we are hoping that that remains achievable. And when I show you the other dates that we've got factored in, hopefully you can appreciate the need for us to keep to that. And we will be doing absolutely everything we can at our end to stay to these deadlines. So this is the deadline that you're being given for all 3 elements. We then have requests for follow-up evidence and/or clarification. So if we were unsure about one of the declarations, or you say, no, we can't meet this standard, we would want a follow-up conversation with you about that. And we will be coming out for additional evidence. So this date is on or before Monday, the 1st of December. So if you get to the end of that, so on Tuesday, the 2nd of December, if you haven't been requested for any evidence or follow-up through the person who is responsible for submission, we will go to them, we will copy in the OC and the LME, if the organisation has an LME. So OCs are not being cut out of this process at all, but we will do the follow-up on or by this date. Those requests, as I say, Tuesday the 2nd, if you haven't been selected, you can breathe a sigh of relief. But our sampling plan will include AEIs of all sizes, of different programme provision, and of course for countries. So we will be going out for a number of different areas, just as we did last year. And we will be specific about that evidence request. So if we are asking for evidence about a minor modification, we will provide the type of evidence that we would like to see. We're not looking for reams and reams for the evidence sampling. We are likely to say a maximum of 3 pieces of evidence. Okay, because if you send us absolutely everything, we need to search through it. However, if we have 2 or 3 pieces of evidence and we can find what we need from that, there's no point in you digging out all the rest. We will come back to you if you haven't provided what we need. It remains an ongoing conversation until the issue is sorted or resolved. Okay. So that's any additional evidence and clarification. We will request it by then, because we heard loud and clear from the sector that you needed to have all of this sent back to the NMC, locked in before Christmas. You have a well-earned, well-deserved, very necessary break in most programmes, and we are keen to support you in the protection of that. So the evidence needs to come into us. It's 10 working days. As you know, an NMC can request it on 5 working days. We've given 10 because you've got this idea of what the evidence might be that's followed up. You know, when you're logging your minor modifications with us, etc., you know the dates and where you go to find that information. So we will give 10 working days to all AEIs to come back to us with any additional evidence requests. Highly unlikely that everyone would get one. Some may get 2, might be across different programs or across different standards or areas of interest. But that evidence sampling will take place, and that will come into us by Friday the 12th of December, please, at close of business. And that should enable us to assess all of that evidence and to come back to you as planned with your outcome and feedback letters on or before Friday the 30th of January. The reason we've put that date in is to really clarify when within your own governance structure you're going to have that feedback, and that we will commit to providing you with meaningful feedback by the end of Friday the 30th of January. Unless, of course, there is an outstanding issue that we need to resolve, and then, of course, you will be fully cited on that because you'll be meeting with a member of the team to discuss. Everything is a conversation first. It is not a letter to your organisation before we have taken steps to understand the circumstances.